Hello, everyone, and good evening. My name is Brian Pichman. I am the Director of Strategic Innovation of the Evolve Project. And today, what we're going to be discussing is the cool new gadgets or things to look out for 2021. So, a little bit about my background. A lot of what I do is I partner up with startup companies, and I get to experiment with new technology before it comes out, which makes life really fun for me. So I get to basically play all day. So I really can't complain with what I do as a career choice. But the purpose of this webinar is to not only introduce to you to some of the new tech as a finished product, but also some of the trends that we expect to see. And some of those trends are obviously influenced by how COVID impacted the world. So we'll talk briefly about that as well. But whenever I talk about technology or tech trends of any kind, or cool new gadgets to look for, I always like to reference what's called the Gartner hype cycle. They say all technology goes through the same type of process, and every piece of technology that you just see, anything that's on a shelf of a store right now, has gone through this hype cycle. In essence, a piece of technology will go through these five main phases. The first of which is your innovation trigger. And usually this is a signal breakthrough in some type of technology development, whether that's an initial product launch or interest from the press. This technology is usually on the rise, and you see early adopters showcasing their potential benefits. The peak of inflated expectations is when this idea skyrockets. There's an influx of media and press attention, and there's a lot of interest and sometimes speculation about, can this technology do what it's supposed to? There's normally heightened expectations of what it will be able to achieve. And then we start to see some of these failures instead of successes. And that's when you enter the trough of disillusionment. And that's where technology doesn't actually meet what the media and press has said it would do, or what the public expectations were. And at this point, those pieces of technology usually go through additional rounds of funding in order to iron out the kinks, as it were. Then you go through what's called the slope of enlightenment, and there's no longer the buzz in the media headlines. A lot of companies have now embraced this piece of technology, or homes have embraced this piece of technology, and now we start to see methodologies and best practices developing from it. And at the end, all technology then goes through the plateau of productivity, and this is usually when the technology is stable, it's widely used or adopted. They say that the growth rate is anywhere from 20 to 30% of the potential audience that started off way at the beginning of the innovation trigger. But at this point, the technology is usually widely acceptable or applicable, but it still usually fits in some sort of niche market. So every year, Gartner, which is a company, puts together like these charts, and they do it in July or August of every single year. So for 2020, it was really unique to see some of the trends come out. And a lot of it is more about people-centric smart spaces, which basically means, how are we using technology to affect our lives? Or how are we using technology to be connected more? And what's really interesting is how some of these pieces of technology is being used in terms of monitoring our health, or tracking a spread of an infection or a pandemic, as it were. So some of the trends for 2019, before I show you 2020, this is what the tech trends were for August of 2019. So we see things like self-driving cars or autonomous driving. We see things such as a lot of different pieces of AI, explainable AI, or AI that can take information and regurgitate it back and have an understanding behind it. What was really cool in 2019 is the idea of flying autonomous vehicles, something that I was promised back when I was in high school, that we'll have flying cars by 2020. And that was a bold-faced lie, I like to say, because I've yet to see a flying car. But they say the flying car idea is still more than 10 years out, which makes me sad. Oops. And then here is the 2020 chart, or how we see things moving through progression. What's really interesting is these new ideas that haven't really been on there before, such as bring your own identity, which is supposed to be in 2 to 5 years. And this idea of bring your own identity or health passport, which you see as the innovation trigger. That's the concept of, hey, I have all my vaccines, or I have all my health in order, or I'm not coughing, I don't have a fever. And so there's these conversations around technology of using it to understand people better. And whether or not that's a good thing or bad thing, I'll let you decide. But these are some of the pieces of technology that's on the horizon that we are expecting to see relatively soon. With the bring your own identity, where you have a digital chip in your phone that has your driver's license, your passport, all the necessary pieces of information about you to let you travel. And maybe it ties into your health information. So some of the trends that were kind of explained on that chart is the sensing and mobility. So they're saying that we're going to have a lot better sensors, and better sensors mean better automation and robotics. So there's tools out there right now that when you walk into a store, it can actually tell you or tell the store owners where the hot spots are. And by hot spots, I mean, where is everyone congregating in the store? Because that's when that's where they want to put the most hard to push items, or where they want to sell things. And so people are using this data. So I have a library background, so I do these conversations with librarians all the time. There's a company called Measure Your Future, and what they're doing is they're putting in heat mapping technology essentially to show where people are at. So then libraries know where to put the new book section or where to advertise the upcoming programs the libraries are going to run. So there's all this tangible data that we can then gather from sensors. And the idea then dovetails into the Internet of Things. So having more internet connected devices to learn from us. And then the other concept that's usually thrown around is the AR cloud, or this idea of you have your physical space and you can use your phone to hold up in a store, and your phone will then tell you where the sale prices are. And that's technology that exists already today. Just not many people are leveraging it. So we're going to start seeing this more and more in 2021. Then when we talk about autonomous driving, they say there's 5 different levels of autonomous driving. The first level is the idea of your smart car telling you how to get there from point A to point B, but not necessarily driving. So level 4 is the idea of a vehicle being able to operate without human interaction in most conditions, but not all. And level 5 is the idea that we're still not there yet for fully autonomous driving, where no matter the situation, no matter the conditions, the car can drive on its own. And we're still a few years out from that. But that's autonomous driving, but autonomous driving can exist across vehicles, robotics, drones, even appliances or otherwise. And we see these autonomous concepts spread across all 4 environments, from sea, land, air, and even in the digital aspect. So the idea, like for instance, to go back to my conversation about flying vehicles, the idea isn't really for human passengers, but it's also to be able to transport things like medical supplies, foods, or your Amazon drone delivery. And so a lot of companies are investing in this technology for autonomous delivery even. In Madison, Wisconsin, there's a robot that drives around over by the university that to deliver you food, which is really cool. And so they have their own Uber, but it's all done by robotics. To kind of take it a step farther, there's a company called Waymo in California that has had 6,299 passengers in its first month of this pilot of doing a robo-taxi, which is really neat. So we're going to start seeing even taxi services shifting into this paradigm of autonomous driving. That's a pretty cool gadget. Changing gears a little, there's a lot of talk about the idea of augmented humans, or where we're taking these better sensors, we're taking better intelligence to make an augmented person, whether that's fully robotic or partially robotic. It expands across both those methodologies. But the idea is to provide a seamless experience that improves health and intelligence and strength of humans. So how can we improve on that? And there's a couple different ways. We have biochips, and they're actively being used today to detect things like cancer, smallpox, or even dementia. A friend of mine has built a company where you wear a hat. And so this hat you wear looks like a baseball cap. You would wear it, and you would wear it over a long period of time, and it can help detect things like Alzheimer's or dementia well before you would notice it by going into a doctor's office. And it's leveraging AI and this constant monitoring of your brain activity to make these decisions. And expanding the idea of biotech or printable organs, we're seeing a lot of people taking what we know about 3D printing and now transforming it to now artificially grow muscles. And it's still very much in development, but we're going to start seeing more of this, or more conversations about being able to print a heart, or at least at the very least providing skin and tissues to grow over a robot, so it has more sensory perceptions, so it can have sensitivity to heat or pressure. The other big technology trend that we're going to see is different infrastructure. So right now, the way our world communicates, we probably heard of 4G quite extensively. Now we're hearing about 5G, and the 5G, which is a band that lets your cellular devices communicate. 5G is quicker, better, requires less power. We're going to see this huge shift in people wanting to be connected more. And so there's this concept of a low Earth orbit, or LEO, which is a new type of satellite that can provide voice and data over more areas and expand people's connectivity, and even inside our own homes. So remember when maybe 10 years ago, everyone probably had the exact same router, which was this little blue box called the Linksys router. And you connected your two devices, your laptop and maybe a phone, and that was all it could handle. Now, for those that have, families where every individual has maybe one or two devices, whether that's a laptop, an iPad, or even a phone, they say that the average human, or the average person in America, has like 3.5 devices per person, and which is probably accurate, because I have like 3 laptops, a phone, 2 different tablets, and a PC, and so I have overloaded my wireless network with just personal devices. But now let's also talk about our smart homes. And I'll talk a little bit about smart homes later today and some of those gadgets around that. But the idea of we're going to be leveraging a lot more data traffic within our home environments. So that means we need better routers and better modems to handle this bandwidth. As we add cameras into our houses, or as we add wearables, these all consume data and an IP address. And now we're also getting into, so again, a lot of us are fairly familiar with 3D printing. And there's 2 different flavors of 3D printing coming out. The first is this idea of nanoscale 3D printing, or printing in such a microscopic level that you can only see the 3D print through a microscope. There's also this idea of multi-dimensional 3D printing. For instance, you can print an ice cube, and then over time, it becomes a puddle of water. And so this concept of 3D printing is unfolding into different arenas, which is kind of interesting to watch. Oops. The other tech trend, and this one's kind of hard to extrapolate as a gadget, but it's the idea of having ownership of your data. And so a lot of people are developing pieces of technology that help you own information about you, because now we're pushing more information about ourselves all over the internet. They say that children, for instance, have a digital identity before they're even born. And you're like, that's impossible, Brian. And I'll tell you this. So when proud mom and dad go get their ultrasound to show the baby, and then they show it to the internet by posting it on Facebook, that individual, that future child, now has a digital identity before it's even born. And so there's this really interesting concept of how do you manage and how do you track your information? If you really wanted to decentralize yourself from the internet, how do you do that? Oops, went too fast. And so this concept that we're going to start seeing, and you're going to see it more in tech products now, where when somebody gives you out a piece of technology and you have to sign up with an account, there's going to be a way where you can delete all your information, hopefully permanently. And so this concept of decentralized web also dovetails into this idea of bringing your own identity. So all of your pieces of information are going to somehow be linked and hopefully unchanged by using something like blockchain, where you can validate your information as you go through. And also feel free to post questions in the chat. I know I talk relatively fast, So if you do have questions or you want to dive into something more, feel free to interrupt me. So now let's dovetail to some more tech gadgets. So I mentioned earlier this idea of Internet of Things. So we're going to see a lot of more connectivity within our home or even our office if we're working in an office again. But they say that having a connected office will bring more efficiency or through data-driven approaches. So right now, there's printers like your normal LaserJet printer that can automatically order a new toner when it's running low, and that's a connected office. But we're going to start seeing it extrapolated into other fields, like when you run out of staples, all of a sudden Amazon knows that you're out of staples and will deliver you staples for you. Where you take the last pad of paper out of a cabinet, and that cabinet has a weight sensor in it, so it knows to order more paper. When we flip gears into our home, nearly everything you have in your house, you can now connect to the internet, whether that's a smart fan that can detect if you left your burners on, to turn the burner off and to vent anything that's burning, to your smart dishwasher, your smart fridge. Samsung probably has my favorite set of smart appliances, everything from a robot to a fridge, or a vacuum cleaner to a fridge. And you can get all these sorts of text alerts from your phone to let you know your washer and dryer is done. Or, oh shoot, do I have milk in my fridge? I can pull up my app and find out if I do. And so there's also, and this technology is forever growing. I wish I could share this one image. I was at a consumer electronics show a few years ago, and they had a countertop that when you put a pan on it, it would heat up just that section because it knows the pan. And then the rest of it is like a giant LCD screen, so you can pull up recipes. And so there's all this really neat connectivity of our smart homes, but focusing on our smart appliances and how we can use them better or more effectively. And then even doing your own diagnosis if it's working or not. And they have everything now. They have an Alexa-enabled microwave, so you can say, Alexa, cook me some popcorn, and the microwave will cook you popcorn after you put some in, obviously. So that's your connected homes. The other piece is the idea of a digital twin. And a digital twin is essentially a virtual representation of an actual physical object. So we're going to start seeing this a lot in the health field, where doctors and whatnot are going to practice operating on digital hearts. And I believe I have a picture of what that's going to look like in a few moments when we talk about AR and VR. But that's another huge concept to understand, is we're going to see a lot more, especially with COVID, or COVID has driven this idea of digital twins a lot faster than normal. And so people are wanting to do things from their home. So they want to be able to play tennis from their house, or be able to meet with a whole bunch of people in a room and go over a 3D printed schematic. So we're doing all this digitally or virtually through different tools. So bringing all of this together, what are we seeing? So we're seeing a lot of new tech being integrated more and more in our lives, and we're seeing a lot of security also being discussed. And that, security, everything from you owning your own data, or your face being your keypad to unlock your phone. But we're starting to have this ability to monitor things 24/7 without using a security personnel even. So there's buildings that are entirely ran by an AI in terms of security. So it detects if there's a person and sends the right alert out. You can buy these kinds of products for your own home for like $100. You can have and I'll show you a picture of it. It's called Canary. It can figure out if it's a person or a dog and alert you to say, hey, there's a person in your house that we don't recognize even. And so there's all this sorts of cool tech that's being developed around security in your face. Earlier, I mentioned this idea of digital twins. So immersive workspaces is huge right now. And so the coolest company to check out is Spatial. So if you had a VR headset, you and your colleagues can all meet in a virtual room and see each other's arms moving around, share the same piece of document, throw up pictures, draw on a whiteboard, in this really neat virtual environment. And that brings us into a concept called extended reality. Extended reality is the combination of VR, which is virtual reality, so 100% immersive in a virtual world, combining AR, which is the idea of augmented reality, so you can see digital objects over physical space, and mixed reality, or the idea of being able to touch and interact with a digital object using your physical hands. And so the idea of extended reality is pushing all three of those things together. Just here's like a visual what the difference is between VR and AR. Again, VR is fully immersive. AR is taking a digital object and putting it over a physical object. But this type of tech has been around forever, but we're going to start seeing it used a lot more and a lot more purposefully. So for those that have children, the ones that are building Minecraft, for instance, they're using VR. For the kids that are playing Pokemon Go, or even adults that are playing Pokemon Go, that's AR, or augmented reality. So here's how we're seeing those two things. We're seeing it everything from construction trainers, learning how to, be up on a skyscraper and hooking up to a pulley or a crane. And then we see it from the medical perspective, people using physical tools on a digital body to do surgery. And so people are learning these things and training on these things all through these really neat and immersive digital and virtual experiences. We're going to see this more and more and more. If you have children in school, I'm willing to bet that by the end of next year, they're going to be in VR classrooms. Then the idea of Zoom will die, and the concept of joining a virtual room will be the new standard. The other thing that we're seeing more and more of is this idea that I mentioned earlier about human augmentation. And it's not necessarily like in the image where you have an exoskeleton that makes your arm stronger so you can lift a car over your head. But people are experimenting with the idea of, how do you augment the brain to increase memory? Just like how you would increase memory on your computer by adding a bigger hard drive or inserting a flash drive, can you do the same thing with your brain? Or putting a chip in your head to decode neural patterns. Or even, and this exists right now, that you can buy a pill that you swallow, and then it connects to an app and it tells you how your digestive tract is working and if there's anything going on. And some of these pills you can reuse, and I'll let you decide how that's possible, which it's pretty neat from a technology standpoint of how we can get all this sorts of data through a simple little thing you swallow. Another trend that's not necessarily a physical gadget, but more of a concept that we'll see more and more of is blockchain. And I'm not talking about, Bitcoin mining, but I'm talking about the idea of taking information and building a digital ledger around it, or being able to track how pieces of information move from point A to point B. And so we're people are talking about like Libra, which is Facebook's version of blockchain. But a lot of people are using this as a technology measure to ensure security, or that data isn't manipulated as it goes from person A to person B. And then kind of combining things in a different way, some of the gadgets that we're going to see will offer what's called a multi-experience. So for instance, Domino's Pizza created an experience that's just beyond using your app. It includes using the app where you now have an autonomous driving vehicle that will then ship to your house. You can use the app to find out where the vehicle is. And then a smart speaker that knows the person's voice when they come out and knows which pizza to give them. And so there's all this interesting concept of taking all this technology that's been around for decades and using it in a different way. I was at a talk recently, and the presenter mentioned that in the last 30 years, we haven't had any huge technology advancements. And you might say, well, we got self-driving cars. I have a phone that fits in my pocket. But that phone that fits in your pocket, we've had that technology for 50 years. We've had the sensors, we had the accelerometers, we've had all these things, but now we're just using them in a different way. And a lot of that new age usage is driven by, programming it in a different light. And the idea of Internet of Things and edge computing, kind of bringing all that together. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like an average human has 3.5 devices per person. So they say by 2023, there could be more than 20 times the amount of smart devices that we're using in our homes, or that we're using in our day-to-day lives. And so there's a little article if you wanted to read about that. And the PowerPoints will be shared, or at least this is recorded, so you can leverage it. And I will post this PowerPoint on my SlideShare, so you can download it and use it as you will. So let's talk about AI. So AI has a lot of really great things, and AI can also be really scary. The important thing to know about AI is this concept called garbage data in, garbage data out. So an AI is only as good as the data it's provided. And so I could talk to you about AI for days. But basically, AI comes in three main forms. We have human-like interaction. So that's the idea of agents, chatbots, and robots. So now when you chat into Amazon, you're usually talking to an AI. Then there's insight generation, where it can identify trends and give you information back. So we see that in the health industry. And then we have advanced automation. So things occurring automatically that's driven by a computer. And I always tell people that the success of AI isn't going to really come from just a small number of experts. It's going to come from people using it. And getting everyone in order to use the AI will only make it better. So so when I mentioned about better sensors, there's technology out right now, and you can actually pilot this if you want. If you go to that website at the top, it's called Cognitive Services, and you can upload an image, and the AI can detect your face and tell you, how you're feeling emotionally based off that image. But we've been using AI for a while, but we're going to start seeing it more and more. So for optical character recognition, or OCR, that's the idea of an AI taking text and turning it into data. So if you think about when you go through those red light cameras, it takes a picture. There's not a person that sits there at the image with a magnifying glass to decipher your license plate number. It's an actual computer that goes, yep, I can read those texts. I'll take that text, I'll do a search, and I'm going to send you a bill for going through a red light. The other AI that we've seen more and more of that's going to get better and better is the concept with Amazon and Netflix, how it makes recommendations based on your purchase reviews. Or Amazon guesses what product you should purchase. And the way they do that, it's comparing you to other people that make the same purchase as you, and making a suggestion based on the differences between the two of you. And then when we see AI in a lot of our wearables, and how it's able to do sensor data. So when you're wearing an Apple Watch, it knows the difference of you running versus jogging versus bicycling. And then we're also going to see this connection with smart cities. And so the idea of a smart city is having companies, organizations, and everything like that all communicating and sharing data and information back and forth to each other, so it knows where to send the transportation to, where there is health issues, police responding before they're actually needing to be called, or an ambulance arriving when it detects that someone has a heart issue. And so that's the concept of a smart city or connected city. Inside in Phoenix, and I'm not sure on the stats of this, but there's a real estate development idea called the cul-de-sac. And the idea is to build an environment that doesn't use cars, but everything is connected to each other. And so check that out. It's supposed to be really neat idea to get rid of vehicles and use connected information so people can get from point A to point B in this environment. So some new technology or new things to kind of look out for, or things that I'm excited for the end of 2020 or 2021, or even just general gift ideas, because the holiday season's upon us. The first cool piece of tech is called Geek Robotics. So Geek Robotics gives you a kit of circuit boards that you could solder together, and then now you have movable robots. Squishy Circuits is another one. They've been around for a while, but they have some really neat tech gadgets to teach you about circuits. And by using Play-Doh, you can make things light up, move, make sound, etc. Itty Bitty Buggy is another educational tech piece that you can then teach of these little robots how to move based on the sound of your voice. It can follow colors, or you can play music. And so there's all these coding aspects around this piece of technology to make people ready for more AI-driven conversations. Looney which allows you to build your own story. And so it's a really neat, it takes the idea of build your own story or those choose your own adventure books to a whole new level. By spinning the dial, you can choose different characters. You choose a character, you choose a supporting character, you choose a device or an item and a location, and then it puts the story together for you. And that's called Looney. One of my most exciting robots that I've been able to play with is the Misty Robotics, and this is Misty. So Misty is a robot that you can program, but also comes jam-packed with like pre-built automations and sensors. So you can teach Misty how to greet you and your family, but say danger, intruder alert if it sees something it doesn't recognize. So it's a very neat tech tool that if you wanted to get into AI and computer vision, it's definitely something to take a look at. Another really neat project that I'm excited about is the Read to Me project. And this is a projector that as you read a story, it will then draw out that story for you. And obviously it's predefined. So as you're reading, if you go to the website, I believe the demo is Jack and the Beanstalk. So as you read out loud Jack and the Beanstalk, the projector will then show the bean, show you planting the bean, a beanstalk growing, etc. So that's the Read to Me project. Another real neat tool that's fun to play with, it's called Novel Effect. And this takes you reading a story, but then it's overlaying that story with sound effects. And instead of you making the sound effects, the app will do it for you. And it does it in real time. So if you were to reread the same page, for instance, it will provide the exact same sound effects for you. The next tool, tech gadget is Orboot. So Orboot's taking your AR, where you use an app to overlay a globe and you can see points of interest. So if you're like, hey, I want to know the food that's in Asia, you use your tablet, click on food and hover over the Asian continent. Or what animals exist in London, and you can hover over London and it'll show you the animals that exist there. When we talk about AI and autonomous driving, check out Zoomy. Zoomy is a car that learns with you. So essentially, she's a little robot, a little self-driving car, and you start off simple. You'll teach her how to drive across a straight line. Then you're going to teach her how to avoid obstacles. Then you're going to teach her how to get from point A to point B. And as you teach it and make it smarter and better, you're also learning the skills of AI or artificial intelligence. Shifting gears a little when we talk about AR and VR, this is the HoloLens 2, which is a newer piece of tech. And HoloLens 2 allows you to do both virtual reality and augmented reality. So you can have digital objects in front of you, and you can interact with those digital objects with your physical hands. So you can spin a gear, or you can take a tour of Rome. Oculus did away with a lot of their cheaper headsets or VR headsets and replace it with what's called the Quest 2, which is replacing the Quest and the Oculus Go. So the Quest is a tool all built in one. You don't need a PC to run it. With most high-end VR headsets, you need a PC. HoloLens has the PC built into it. Oculus Quest has software built into the headset as well. And so you're able to do virtual experiments. You can dissect a heart. You can paint in 3D. You can ride a roller coaster, or travel the world. And so the Oculus Quest 2 is definitely something to kind of keep an eye out for. When we talk about apps, the neatest app that I came across recently is Amplify Reading. If you were younger and had to do Reader Rabbit back in the day, this is essentially the new age of Reader Rabbit with an AI component. So you go through activities, it understands what you're learning, and challenges you in the right way to kind of expand your knowledge. Taking it a step farther, Roby is a little AI robot. It doesn't move, but it uses artificial intelligence to train your child on certain concepts, but usually around the idea of STEM. So it'll teach you science, technology, engineering, and math through stories, games, and songs. And there's over 500 different lessons. And as you progress and do better and better, Roby challenges you with harder and harder activities. Using an iPad, a neat cool gadget is the Shifu Plugu. And what this company does is they made an app that lets you learn about math, counting, or even how to play the piano. And so the way it works is that there's a camera that watches you play with on the playmat, and it then gives you real-time feedback if you're doing something correctly or not. Arty is a program that lets you draw with this robot, but the idea is it's taking geometry and learning math, and so you compute your math and you get shapes out of it. So it's really great to get the left side, right side of the brain to work together to create things. For the Star Wars fans, check out Lightsaber Academy. And what this is, it's a toy that connects to an app, and it tracks your movement, so you can learn how to wield a lightsaber and defend yourself from blasters, because it tracks the angle, speed, and the accuracy of those individual moves. Curry is another neat new tech tool that teaches you about shapes, sounds, colors, and objects. And so the way it would work is you place this little wooden cube over tiles, and and if you're doing an activity about color, you shout out the color and you see if you're right, or you hold it over the square and it'll say square. For those that are into robotics, Gluon is the tech gadget to look at. What Gluon is, it's a robotic arm that basically performs all those functions that you would see in an assembly line, or it can do 3D printing, laser engraving, painting, or even suction cup things that lift things up or down. But the idea is using this to learn about the robotics industry, and then leveraging it to do activities or do different programs. And then another neat little tech toy for education is the CamiBot Pi. And the CamiBot Pi is a creative coding robot that you would learn how to program through different activities across his normal school curriculum. So that could be everything from the solar system to traveling the world, or where the capitals are. But it's based on Scratch, and it's really fun and simple to use, and you don't have to be a programmer in order to use it. It's out of the box simple. When we talk about drones, drones are fun to play with and drive. There's a lot of good use cases for why you should have a drone, whether that's from understanding, you can explore different nature habitats with it. So in places where you can't go, you can fly a drone over to it. People are using drones to do video photography, but the neatest drone and probably the most affordable is the Mavic Mini. So it's from a company called DJI, which has some of the best drones that are out there. The Mavic Mini, I believe flight time is 31 minutes, and it can go like 30 miles an hour. So it's fast, it's lightweight, and you can fly it around and take pictures or video, and it's a really fun tool to even take out if you're going on vacation. When we talk about robots, Samsung has come out with a set of robots. So they have the Samsung Service, the Samsung Bot Care, and the Samsung Home, and they all have very simple instructions. So one is for the service industry, so delivering food to a table. Another one is for reminding you to take your medicine, for instance, or having conversations. And so there's a lot of usage of people are starting to see robots in their homes, and I expect to see more companies kind of mimicking what Samsung is doing with their Samsung bots. To pause and shift gears just slightly, another interesting gadget that people are experimenting with is the idea of smart dust, which is basically just particle-sized computers. And in those particle-sized computers, you can then measure the temperature in the room. Some are saying that it can take pictures even. And so the concept of using dust even as a method of gathering data for better sensors is a real thing that people are experimenting with and learning about. We also have a lot of new mainstream tech, because around the holiday season, every mainstream piece of technology from Microsoft, PlayStation, Sony, and Samsung all comes out with their newest and greatest TVs, their PlayStation or their game consoles, or in Apple's case, the whole lineup of new phones, iPads, etc. So if you're looking for game console, I'm not going to dive into it because it's mainstream. You can find that pretty quickly on your own. But Xbox and PlayStation, I believe they just announced, or they just went for sale or released for sale just the other day. So most of these things are already sold out. But what's interesting about Apple is that they're saying that their M1 processor, which is inside their iPads, are faster than some of the computer processors that exist today, which is neat because it's a very small device that can have computing power. Oops, sorry. Then we also start seeing more of smart fabric. So one of my favorite stories of what smart fabric is, there was a 16-year-old girl in New York that wanted to be able to walk the streets of New York without having to look at their phone for directions, but instead have shoulder pads that vibrate when it's time to turn. So she basically made vibrating shoulder pads connected to an app, used Google Maps to travel, and it would vibrate on her arms when it's time to turn across the street. But there's other companies that are taking a similar idea. So a company called Exoma has been using fibers to into pajamas that's going to be worn by patients in the hospital, specifically patients with dementia. And so the idea is, instead of having those types of patients, which usually are forced to sit in a small room all day because they don't want to, because the hospitals want them to get hurt, this allows them to walk around and travel. And with the smart fabric, it can read things like heart rate, blood pressure, where they're geographically located in the building, without having to keep them under close observation. It allows them to be a little bit more free. And then we're going to talk about at-home creations. So a company called Inventables has a series of products. They just announced their newest set of products, which is the X-Carve Pro, which looks like this. But it plugs into a computer and you can create things like this. So you basically can print on wood different shapes and different objects, and you can make these really cool and fun and creative pieces. So if you want a Christmas gift for yourself, you can print yourself a Christmas gift to make Christmas gifts, is what I always tell people. But it's a really simple tool to use. The software is, you don't have to be a engineer, you don't have to be a manufacturer of any kind or a woodworker. It does the job for you. You put your design in place and you hit print, and there's templates already that exist. All right, wrapping it up here, connected lives. So I mentioned earlier that people are connecting to themselves in their homes a lot more and a lot differently. So when we say connected self, we see a lot of things, especially with health, because we gamified it. How many of us have Fitbits that we compete with our friends and family with how many steps they can take, or how many calories did they burn, or how little calories did they consume? But we're seeing ourselves connecting things a lot more with a lot of these different wearables. So Apple, I believe, just also came out with a new Apple Watch, but Fitbit just came out with a new version of their Fitbit watch. So there's all these pieces of tech that give us real-time data about how healthy we are. But we also have things like shoes, even, that are now being connected to our apps. And so this shoe, you can actually, so if it's in the wintertime, you can turn up the heat on your shoes so you have heated shoes. But the wearables don't stop just for adults. They even have them for children or babies. So this is the Nemo onesie. So it's a onesie that you put on that will give you real-time updates if your baby is sleeping on its back or on its side, what their temperature is, how they're breathing. And then you can eavesdrop to make sure that they're not crying or suffocating or whatever it may be. So that's the Nemo onesie. We even have brain sensing headbands. So Muse is probably the most widely known and most popular, but they just came out with some new updates to their software. So what Muse is, it has an EKG in it, and you would basically do brain exercises to help with memory and recollection. And if you wanted something for your pets, these things exist as well. So there's all sorts of wearables that you can put on your animal that can tell you if your pet is doing well, what their heart rate is. You can GPS track them, and it can over time detect if they're acting differently, and then let you know if they're sick because of it. But they say that in 2021, how we connect and how we interact with things is going to change dramatically, because we have better connected fabrics. We're having things built with smart glasses. We have wearables for every part of our body, and we even have pills that we can consume that can give us real-time data. And then when we talk about connected homes, we have a lot of devices now that connect to things better than ever before. The idea is to offer either automation or energy savings, or we can even use it to track our energy usage. Another piece of connected home tech offers better security. So Samsung SmartThings is a Samsung side of the house of their own version of hubs and sensors, so you can put your own smart home together for less than a couple $100, and you can have your lights and everything turn on and off automatically, or even talking to your smart devices like Google Home or Alexa to do so. Wink is a competitor, so that's the Wink product. Very similar idea, but they have a really cool built-in tablet for your wall that you can then mount and interact with. Nest has been around for a while, but they always come out with new pieces of tech and forms of security. We already talked about smart appliances and how we're connecting our appliances in different and more meaningful ways, so we can get real-time updates without having to get up from the couch and looking at what's going on. Then we have security systems like this. So here's the main three that most people use. I'm a big fan of Canary. That's what I use. But what Canary can do, it can detect the difference between your dog moving or a person walking into your room. And then it can also give you health reports of, the air quality in your room. There's all sorts of really inexpensive wireless cameras. The most popular that I think is the Arlo Netgear, because it's 100% wireless. So it's wireless power, because battery powered, and then connects wirelessly to their hub. We even have things for outside. So if you had a sprinkler system, you can connect that to your home and have your sprinkler system know when to water and when not to water. So if it says, hey, it's going to rain tomorrow, there's no need to water the grass, it'll manage it for you. And we even have things for smart security. So smart locks that are touch sensitive and detect your phone, or you throw in a keypad that you can then update through an app on your phone. And then we even have stuff for our outside lives. So garage doors, blinds, or even our doorbells are all now more and more connected than ever before. So you can open and close blinds through your app. And if you haven't heard of Philips Hue, what they have is a series of LED changing products that you can now connect to your TVs using a tool called Hue Sync Play. So if you're watching a movie, the colors of your room can adjust to match the backgrounds of said movie. So wrapping this all up together, how are some ways to stay informed of what new tech trends or new tech gadgets to look at? The biggest is the CES show, or the Consumer Electronics Show, that takes place every year in January. But this year it's going to be 100% remote, so it makes it a little bit easier for anyone to join. The next is South by Southwest. So every year in March, and again, this come around, it's going to be remote as well. But it's in a festival of music, art, education, and technology as well. So you'll see a lot of new tech pieces being announced there. Other places to watch is crowdfunding websites. So take a look at Kickstarter or Indiegogo to see what new pieces of tech that are out there. A lot of the stuff that I get to play with were actually once born on a crowdfunding website. And the last piece is, attend different webinars, TED Talks, etc. So do more of these webinars. And there's a lot of really great presenters that do Space Puts together. Check out some of those recordings and watch, because there's a lot of really good pieces of information, everything from what 3D printers you should use, or how to purchase 3D printer even, to how to build websites. So there's all sorts of really neat ways to stay informed of what's going on and leverage that, especially when it's free. It's a no-brainer to participate in. So hopefully you all enjoyed today's presentation. I will post these slides on my SlideShare site, which I have the link on my slide here. If you have any questions, feel free to post in the chat or the question and answer section, but you've all been great. Let me know if you have any questions. And if you watch the recording or watching this later, feel free to reach out if you do as well.
It's looking kind of quiet. So thank you so much for Brian for hosting this for us. Like he said, there's his contact info, so you can do questions. You can also reach out to DoSpace. We can see what we can do. Other than that, thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a good night.
Thanks, everyone, for attending. Enjoy your evening.